Thank you. Good afternoon. Today is Monday, June the 10th, 2024. This is a regularly scheduled Tennessee Athletic Commission meeting, and my name is Roxana Gamusio. I'm the executive director with the commission. First item of business, I'm going to go ahead and take roll call to make sure we have quorum and for us to be able to proceed. When I read your names, please let me know that you are here. Dr. Christy Halbert. Thank you. And on the mics, I apologize. With our new mics, if we haven't had them before, you need to press on the little person button. It'll turn red and then it'll detect your voice. And then if you turn it again, it will go off. So just the button that has the person and the mic. Just one time and it should turn red. It isn't. There you go. Try that one. Is that one working?
We should have the batteries in a balance.
One of them went on off because they C3, C12.
That one. There we go.
Yeah,
All right.
we got you here.
I am here. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay, so we have Dr. Halbert. Next, Ben Grove.
Here.
Thank you. Dan McGrew.
Here.
Thank you. And Corey Cipolla.
Here.
Thank you. And before I proceed, I want to introduce everyone to our newest member. Corey, welcome to the Tennessee Athletic Commission. We are thrilled to have you here. Anything you want to say to the commission before we get going?
I mean, just so that I'm excited to be here. I was a college athlete, so I love athletics. This is awesome. So I'm really excited about it.
Well, we are thrilled to have you here. He is our public member. And so proceeding, we've got quorum, so we will go ahead and get started. Notice of this meeting was properly put on the commission's website for the June 10th, 2024 Athletic Commission meeting. The date, time, and location were also added to the website on June 13th of 2023 when this meeting date was set. Additionally, this month's agenda has been on the website since June 3rd. The agenda itself was emailed to all of our members. It is the first document on your iPads, and if you've had a chance to review it, if I could have a motion to adopt it as presented, we can proceed.
I'll adopt as presented.
We have
I
a
second.
motion by Christy and a second by Dan McGrew. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. The next item of business is are the minutes from our March meeting. That's the last meeting that we held. If there are any changes, please let me know. These are on your iPads as well, but if there are none, I would need a motion to proceed with the March minutes as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ben. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. The next item of business is just a short recap. It is the minutes for the April 5th. If the commission recalls, we had a virtual special meeting on April the 5th to consider some waivers. And so this is that minutes from that meeting. And if there are no changes regarding it, it's just to properly notice that we held it and what the commission addressed. We would need a motion to accept that April special meeting.
I make a motion to accept the April special meeting.
Thank you, Dan. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ben. Next on our iPads are the financial numbers. This would be the budget presentation from my part, and it looks decent right now, so that's the great thing. We have financial information through April of this year, and this reflects a surplus of $168,658 additional dollars for the year so far. This brings the reserves to a balance of $103,182, and that is due to a couple of events that had media coverage and the broadcasting fee, so that helps immensely, obviously. So that is just informational for everyone. The next item on page 8 of your iPads are the 2025 proposed dates. Those have been emailed to you, but if you need them also sent again, please let me know. They are based on what we currently do the Monday afternoons. And so if it's okay with the commission, I would need a motion to proceed with these dates.
I'll make that motion to proceed with the dates.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Christy Halbert, a second by Dan McGrew. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Members, if by chance you press on your button and it doesn't come on, it's because 4 mics are live at the same time. So, and once I stop talking, I'll definitely turn mine off. But next we have appearing before the board. So I'm going to skip over the legal part for just a minute. And if you could, I'm going to introduce you to Coach Kevin Walker on your iPads. I'm going to give you that page so you can skip. If you can scroll to page 12, and then you will see a presentation for WACO Pro Kickboxing. Also, USA Kickboxing is how they are presenting themselves. You have a paper letter as well that I'm happy to give you a minute to read. That was also presented. This is basically kickboxing wanting to come to Tennessee, do other events here, and asking for some consideration of their rules versus ours and some waiver information. So Jesse will guide us through that, but I want to introduce you to Coach Kevin Walker and give him a chance to also answer any questions you have, Coach. Thank you, sir. And your mic is red, so you're good.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for agreeing to have me here today. I appreciate the conversation. And it's centered around the fact that I personally have a dream for Nashville to become the Vegas of USA combat sports. I want us to really take off in that direction. As such, in 2018, I co-authored some legislation and lobbied and got it passed with the intent to make sure that we could make specifically Tennessee a great place for those events, for those future Olympians. I've been working with both the U.S. Kickboxing and USA Mixed Martial Arts national team since 2013, have sent several athletes over the years, and I was able to convince them that Nashville is where they should start calling home. And as such, that's why we're here today. We're looking to do more events here in Tennessee, and as such, per the guidelines given by the World Association of Kickboxing Organizations, the IOC, Sport Accord, World Games, etc., we want to just make sure that we are in compliance with that, and as well that we are standing true to the original intent of the legislation of the and the legislatures when they pass the law. To that end, I'm just here to answer any questions that you might have and any concerns that you might have.
Mics are not working. I should have checked this originally. No, you're
It might be that we have 400.
okay. Just for the commission's awareness, part of this letter, if you go into a few more pages, Coach Walker does outline some of the differences between our rules as well as the USA Kickboxing rules. I've gone through also the rules that he provided, the complete set as well as ours again, just to look at it. And for the most part, the rules are generally almost identical in most form and fashion. There are a few items, and I greatly appreciate Coach Walker pulling those specific items out that he saw in conflict. If you want, we can kind of look at some of those pieces to see if the commission would waive our rules to allow the USA Kickboxing rule to be applied. I don't believe from looking at it that it would cause an undue hardship on any of our inspectors. For the most part, these rules could be implemented without creating additional cost. There were a few items such as our rule prohibits females from wearing breast protectors, and their rules would I guess, allow it or require the?
It would, both, well, it would allow it.
Okay.
Correct.
That's what I thought. I couldn't
Yeah.
remember if it was required, but their rules do allow the chest protector. So we would have to waive something like that. We could tell our inspectors ahead of time that, if there are female kickboxers, they will or may be wearing a chest protector. That is something that they would probably a minor shift for them. But most of the rules that relate to scoring, relate to the outcomes of the decisions. There are some differences there that should not cause any type of increase in cost to our inspectors because those would be implemented by the officials and the judges. Just a few other minor differences. There are not draws or technical draws, for example. They would have to have a decision at the end of the bout. And, when all those scorecards are given to our inspectors, they would just need to be aware that if it is a draw, or if it does look like it would be a draw, they would need to let those judges know that they need to determine a winner at that point, that it would not be a draw on the record. But those are things that our inspectors can be instructed on. They can implement without an additional cost to the commission or the state of Tennessee. And then Coach Walker has outlined some of those other differences specifically as it relates to scoring, injuries, and the 8 count. Oh, and the standing 8 count. I did want to bring that to everyone's attention as well, because we do still have in our kickboxing rule that standing 8 count. And as part of our bare knuckle boxing rules are being presented today, we do remove that standing 8 count since we are one of the few states that still have that within our rules. That was something that is proposed. So if we did want to waive that for their events, that's something that potentially the commission could be looking at phasing out as well anyway.
So are we just talking about K1 for the 10-point must system, or is it also the full contact and the low kick?
Correct. All correct.
What were the times of the rounds? Maybe I overlooked it here. 3-minute rounds, 2-minute rounds, what?
2-minute round.
2-minute rounds,
Yes,
male and female, correct?
correct.
And the 3 rounds?
3 rounds.
In the wrapping of the hands, that is no different than the Tennessee Pro Kickboxing rules, is that?
That is correct.
The only difference with that, and I had to go to look at the centimeters to yards since we use yards and they have centimeters, but we do say no more than 15 yards, I believe, and theirs is a minimum, so it would comply with it.
Okay, and the jail wraps, those aren't allowed?
No.
Okay.
I want to thank you for being here. This is exciting. I do have a question about women participants.
Yes.
It does appear that the breast protectors are mandatory.
Okay.
And the reason they are not mandatory for our state is due to safety concerns, because the breast protectors, especially the hard shell or the hard plastic, have been reported to actually cause injury to the athletes. So I would encourage you to look at that.
Okay.
And then also, I am curious, are there any other differences between male and female combatants? Because so far, flipping through, it looks like they operate under otherwise the same rules. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the same payment structure as well?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
What other states does, is it WACO? Or Waco?
Waco, correct.
WACO?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what other states have you've been participating in? What other states?
Ohio most recently, and as of today, we're simultaneously being approved in California.
Okay.
Did y'all do previous events in Georgia? I thought I remembered. being going there
Not,
before.
we've done some amateur events, yes, and we've held our national training camp in Georgia. That is correct.
Understood.
In your organization, are there any individuals that have started in well, your kickboxing organization that have had no prior experience in kickboxing before? I mean, no amateur experience or?
For the professionals.
Yes, good. Just somebody just wanted to turn pro.
Oh, no, that I've not ever heard of that, and currently I'm not aware of that, of the
Okay.
members that we have. No, there's, the amateur to pro is, well, the amateur rankings is more of a development program, towards the pro. Unless someone was already a professional combatant before they came to the organization, that would probably be the only case in which we already didn't have an eye on them or had some type of communication with them.
I think I saw somewhere on the paper here, you were talking about the number of participants that you had in your last bout. I think I saw that somewhere here. How many fighters do you have right now in your organization? Do you know that?
In the professional, as the organization as a whole, as a whole, we have upwards to about 400.
And you said you have several training here in Nashville area?
Yes,
Tennessee?
I've hosted a training camp here in Nashville as well. We've had one in Georgia. I'm a national team coach as well as the Tennessee State Director for USA Kickboxing.
Oh, okay. So as a total, you think you have around 400 or so participants?
Oh, certainly, and we actually just started as part of our expansion, we just started a collegiate program at Tennessee State University.
Okay. Do you have any masters boxing, like older individuals?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. There's international masters competition as well, and I believe because you're aged out at 41, and then from that point you go to the masters, and then I want to say there is an executive as well.
Okay. In your rules, what about the weight limits that you have? I mean, is there what's the difference in the weight? 10 pounds, 5 pounds?
Typically, they're typically around 4 kilos difference between each weight class. And because of the stipulations in it being in accordance with the International Olympic Committee, there is no allowance. You must make the scratch weight.
Page 6.
Page 26.
Well, page 1.
Mr. Walker, I have another question.
Yes.
So currently you do have amateur contests,
Correct.
and how many per year would you say you have?
We've primarily only held the national championships here, but we have had some USA versus the world competitions here. We've had some international competitions, and we believe that as we continue into to merge the rule styles and being more acclimated to the Tennessee rules, our mission is to have more regular events in the state of Tennessee. But as yet, we've had USA versus Canada twice, USA versus Spain, USA versus Mexico. We've done 2 just regular shows. And then we've held since 2000, we've been holding the national championships in which we select the members of Team USA. Here in Nashville last year, due to a scheduling conflict, we weren't able to hold it here, and we're really anxious to get it back to Nashville.
So, Mr. Walker, nationwide,
Yes.
how many amateur USA kickboxing sanctions do you all issue for club shows as well as nationals or international exchanges?
In a year, we would I would say upwards to 100.
And so what you're asking today is for us to approve professional sanctions. Were for
That is
USA
correct.
kickboxing. Okay, thank you.
How has the team done so far internationally? Yeah,
We-
international competitions like USA versus Canada, whatever. How?
Oh, we've done exceptionally well. The new wave of interest and popularity here in the United States was sparked by a young man named Amari Boyd here from Nashville, who was the first American to win a medal at the World Games in 2017. So from that point, the team has just developed, is grown, and we've done exceptionally well. Several Pan American gold champions, etc. And we're getting and we've been more and more competitive with our international nemesis as it is. And so, and the reason we want to do this is because we want the United States to be competitive. Frankly speaking, other countries, they take bragging rights, and we don't like to go over there and not compete well. And so this is one of the ways that we can develop our team so that we can compete with countries who have national funding behind them, unlike our American team, because we really want that, make sure that our American athletes have the best opportunity to represent, because they work really, really hard, and they deserve it. And we just think that this is the best way to do it so that we can develop our pros, so that we can, quite frankly, have better conversations at the tables when we're at these international events. It gets a little heated, as you can imagine.
Mr. Chair, I'm satisfied with the discussion thus far, with the exception of the making sure that the breast protectors would be optional for women combatants. Otherwise, I'm satisfied with the conversation or the discussion that we've had thus far. I'd be ready to vote.
Is there any more discussion from any other board members? And would that be an option to have it optional, the breast protector for the females?
I think as it relates to our rule, I think we could say we could waive the prohibition and say that it would have to be optional. I think, but their rule then would have to say, we're gonna allow it to be optional. I have kind of 2 questions. One's a follow-up to that. Are breast protectors required in any of the other international games involving, say, USA versus Canada? If female kickboxers are there any other rules that would apply that would say those female fighters have to wear a breast protector that you're aware of?
No, I believe that To answer your question, no.
Okay. And then related to that, just mainly for the commission's awareness, there is a statute under the commission's statutes that state, contrary to any other provision, the commission may authorize international qualifying events for kickboxing to occur in the state if the events meet the standards required for such events by the World Association of Kickboxing Organizations or any subsequent entity recognized as the official kickboxing governing body by the International World Games. So with that in mind, I did have one question, because I know that was something you had brought up as well, Coach Walker. Are the professional contests that will occur, are those going to be considered qualifying for any other type of world match or other qualifying event?
They will also be qualifying.
Okay,
events,
so not
correct.
just the amateur, the professional will also count as qualified. Okay. I did want to make sure, because the statute, I think, contemplates more so on the amateur side,
Yes.
and we haven't really looked at it from the professional side. So
Correct.
that is something I think it still could apply there. Just want to make sure that I was aware that we're talking about professional qualifying. as well.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Are your professional bouts normally televised or streamed in any way?
They're streamed. Yes, they are.
Okay. Is that a pay-per-view or is that free stream?
Many times sometimes they are, many times it's not.
Well, Dr. Halpern, are your questions answered to your satisfaction?
I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Well, if not, I think maybe we are ready to vote if there's no more discussion.
I believe we still need a second. We have a motion to proceed with the waivers as presented.
I'll make the motion. Oh, but not as presented. I'm sorry. I do
With
have
the-
the exception of the
Yes.
women's breast protector.
And I think you all should also add, someone had asked, I can't remember who had asked it, but about the weight classes. The kilograms to our pounds are a little bit different. They're very close, but I think it would be worth waiving ours as well and have their weight classification apply, because theirs is a little bit more strict than ours. And if that's the direction they need to go for any type of qualifying event, then we should waive our rule, or you should consider waiving our rule, I should say.
I agree. I'd like to make that addition as well, please.
Okay, so I suppose that is so noted about the weight classifications there.
So I'll make the motion with the addition of the points on women's breast protection and kilograms.
I second.
You're good. You're good. Yes, we'll rotate. Thank you. We have a motion by Christy Halbert and a second by Dan McGrew to accept the waivers as presented with two changes, making the breast protection for our female combatants to be optional, and the weight classification would follow in kilograms the way that USA Kickboxing has them presented. All those in favor of proceeding with these waivers, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the waivers pass, and we will work on them with Jesse to make sure that we've got it all pretty straight and move forward with working closely with you.
Excellent.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. Thank you for your time.
Nice meeting you.
Pleasure to meet you. Thank you. So before we move on and I turn it over to Jesse for a while, we're seeing some of these waivers come up, right? We had the special meeting that required, because it was our first time to really get together and talk about them. We have now USA Kickboxing, and they worked hard on this and got it to us timely. Friday, I received information for Karate Combat. Didn't give us time to present it before you or have them appear, but it is very similar. Jesse was wonderful and dove into the differences. Very similar. They don't seem like anything that would be too much for our field inspectors to carry. And that is one of our concerns. As you can understand, our field inspectors are trained really hard. We're always struggling to get more part-timers in each area to cost the program less and be able to handle our finances correctly. And so that is a concern, making sure that our people are there to protect and knowledgeable. So it's something we're going to keep looking at. But as these requests come up, and this is a question to the commission, do we always want to have a meeting to have you debate them? Would you, as a commission, feel comfortable with Jesse and I going through them? Because the one for Friday, for example, for Karate Combat, Combat already has a date coming to Nashville. They are coming July 25th. And so we would have to have a pretty soon meeting. Again, we got to look at the points quickly to see that they wouldn't be anything too out of the ordinary. They have their own team of judges and referees, very trained in their stuff, so we would be comfortable. Is the commission inclined to let Jesse and I debate those and make those decisions, or are you always going to want to deliberate and go over them? That would be my question.
Is this something that we need to vote on,
It,
or are we just
It's
opinion?
guidance I'd like you to give me, because that's going to make me decide, do we need to have a meeting in the next 2 weeks at the most? Because they're going to be licensing 20 individuals and need to proceed pretty quickly. So if you're wanting to look at that and have them speak before you and all that, we'd have a meeting soon. If you're comfortable with Jesse and I doing that, this isn't that different than any of the other professions we regulate. We review applications every day because we want people working and out there, and so we don't delay them for meetings. Those outside of the box that we're not comfortable with, we would always bring to you. So if the commission's comfortable giving us that authority, we would vote on it. If you're not and want to always look at them, and that's perfectly fine, we would then, continue that path and try to schedule, I guess, short virtual meetings to address those.
And I think one thing that, sorry.
You're
Brought my mics. I think one thing to add as well is if we are seeing an increase in this, I mean, this is our third request in essentially the last 2 months. And they're typically pretty minor of changes. I mean, we saw from the first one with Team Combat League, it was a different style. I think that made sense to look at because the style of how the league was going to work was very different than what we see with professional boxing. What we saw with the WACO, the kickboxing, it's some minor differences there. This karate one, initially we looked at it until we don't regulate karate. And we looked at it and we said, well, this is essentially mixed martial arts under our definition. So there's differences with the fight, the ring area. They don't use a ring. They don't use a cage. So there's some differences there. And there are some differences in terms of fouls because they don't do submissions. They don't do the same type of, there's some takedowns, but it is a little bit different when someone gets taken down as to how that fight is allowed to proceed. So for the most part, it seems like these organizations, they've got their referees, they've got their judges that are trained for their specific style. For our licensing side, there's not much of a difference. We figure out, are you being licensed as a kickboxer, a boxer? Are you being licensed as a mixed martial artist? But then we do have to look at some of those health, safety, and welfare. Same thing with the breast protector. I think it made sense for the commission to look at that. Same thing with, rounds and some of those areas. If it's something minor, maybe with scoring or fouls, maybe it doesn't need to be considered as much. But if it is something that looks more so as if the health, safety, or welfare could be at risk, maybe that's something where the commission wants to look at it. And we could also try to outline this, long term, if we think this is going to keep happening by rules, to say the executive director could look at if it's just changing something minor, waiving something minor, such as apparel that is, not something that's for health, safety, or welfare. If it's scoring, fouls, maybe things like that. I don't know, with strikes, that's something with this karate, the combat karate, the strikes are a little bit different. Maybe that's something where the commission's expertise could help on. But we're looking at it and we're saying we could see where you all could waive it, have the authority to do so. But we're not sure if that's the direction you all want to go, authorizing us or looking at all of these and making a judgment based on the health, safety, and welfare and whether it's required to have that type of a waiver process. And I think another option potentially too, we could set for the last one we did, that was a virtual meeting because we couldn't get everyone together in time. We could also set more meeting dates. As you all see, there are items on the agenda. Today we have a rulemaking hearing, but in terms of new business, other than the waivers, we're not seeing a whole lot of new business that needs to be approved.
So you're saying that this organization, Karate Combat, is scheduled for an event on the 25th. Where is that scheduled to be?
I don't have the location. There's conference for cryptocurrency and they're connected with that. So I don't know the location. I just know that that's the reason the date was selected, because I thought we were looking ahead and we'd have time to kind of look at the date and schedule, but they definitely do have that date already.
Have you seen their rules that they go by, the Karate Combat rules? Do we have them here?
You do not. This was all sent to us late Friday. So
Okay.
that's the reason they didn't appear before you and you don't have them. We've not had a chance to really look at them. What they did do is present kind of those differences. So they sent a drawing of the ring, which is very different, obviously, without the ropes, the size. They sent, I believe it's like 7 rules that they focused on being different from ours.
Do they have judges around the ring? Like,
Yes.
like the old time, I guess, the karate tournaments would have? They have 4 judges, and does the referee score in that particular in the bout?
That's another thing that's partially at issue is they only gave us these small differences between our rules and theirs. So we don't even have a full copy of their rules, which is why it wouldn't be necessarily appropriate to do a waiver today on this, because we do want to go back. Same thing we did with the WACO is they told us the differences. We went back and looked at it to confirm. They listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 rules that they said these are the minor differences that we have between your MMA rules and our rules. Again, we would want to look at everything to make sure the commission could appropriately say whether or not a waiver would be appropriate. It looks like there's, from the drawing they provided, there's 3 judges sitting around, similar to how all of our other professional combat is. That aspect is the same. There's not a difference with they haven't told us what the referee, where the referee is, or any difference with their duties. So my understanding would be the referee would be similar to mixed martial arts. That's an assumption I'm making based on kind of what they gave us.
So what you're asking is whether or not we want to give you and Roxanne the ability to look at that and to make a decision on whether or not it should go on, pretty much.
Or do you want to continue seeing them and going through them yourselves? Because in that case, then we will do our due diligence and then try to have a meeting pretty soon so that you all have a chance to.
Is
go through
there
those.
potentially a hybrid solution where you all are empowered to do the fact checking, put a list together for us, and then a virtual meeting would be then very short for us because we could study your fact finding prior to the telephonic meeting?
Absolutely. Other than needing quorum, and you all were amazing for this meeting because we knew we'd be short one. We can definitely go in that direction. That's kind of what we did with Team Combat when they came. And I would imagine since they've got a date, they would jump on a meeting because of the date. They're wanting to meet pretty quickly if they do need to meet with you. So it would definitely mean that Jesse and I drop other things and focus on that so we get everything answered and presented to you. So it's just interesting and worth the conversation since we're seeing 3 of these so quick together. I don't want to overimpose on your time trying to gather, and find a date for these virtual meetings because it may be something that we see more of.
And that's, something we could also consider is in the short term, in the long term, whether or not we want to set any rules that specifically outline if you want a waiver and you're only waiving scoring. For example, that was one of the things that WACO had mentioned was there was scoring done with clickers. They still use our 10 points scoring system, but they specifically look at the number of legal strikes. And that's something that they use to consider the score. That's not really something we have to waive because realistically, it's still the 10-point score. There's still compliance with it. We don't necessarily need to dictate, how they come up with that. It should be consistent between combat sports, but if they're going to use the clickers to calculate, or if they're going to kind of do that, in their head, either way, we should still comply with our rules. So something like Team Combat League, and I think something like this karate, where it is kind of a different style of sport, maybe that is something that we want to make sure the commission is definitely looking at, because it's going to be different for our inspectors. It's going to look different too, which I think is important because I know some of our commission members do go to these events as well. And if they see something, hey, this is very different, how did this get approved? How did this happen? And I will add that they have this date, but I don't believe they've made an application yet.
No.
So this is the date that they have said they want to use because it ties to their convention, but they have not submitted an application. They've not been approved.
Well, I think that the suggestion that Dr. Halperin made is a very good idea of fact finding and then relaying to us in a virtual meeting, maybe, exactly what the parameters are or what they do differently. Because I think that really is a part of our job, what we're supposed to do. So I think that that would be a good solution.
I agree as well. I mean, I'd much rather know than not.
Okay, thank you. That sounds perfect for this one. And as Jesse said, if we have to do rules to kind of set some of those parameters, we will. So by Friday, you'll have an email from me for when we can meet virtually.
Do we need to make a motion
No.
for the, okay.
No, not at all,
All right.
not for that. So
Thank
I
you.
think we're great. I think we're great. Thank you, members. I really appreciate that conversation. I will leave it with Jesse on your iPads. We're going to do the legal report first, if that's okay. And it was before the WACO piece, so I'm going to give you the page number. That starts on page 9 of your iPads for the legal report, and then we have rulemaking hearing.
All right. Thought I clicked something there on the side of this. I'm still not used to these yet. All right, thank you. So the legal report, we only have 3 cases on it. 2 of them are new cases, and the third is one that's being represented after the respondent had contacted us and asked for the commission just to reconsider it since he did not respond to the initial complaint. But the first one, it's complaint number 2023064461. This is a complaint that was opened administratively after one of the last meetings involving a ring official. So I'll give you all a moment to read the summary there, and then the recommendation, we can discuss this further. But this was one that was an administrative complaint. Are there any questions on this one? Don't want to rush anyone still reading. Okay.
So for the resubmission complaint, the new information basically just sounds to me like he reached out and said that he had a ride and the guy bailed on him, but he still didn't respond. He didn't contact anybody or give best efforts to even communicate his side of the story.
He said he had talked to the promoter, and that's why I asked him if he had any documents he could send to us, but he said he was in contact with him, but he didn't, clarify how many times he contacted them. And that's why I said, my understanding was the promoter had contacted you and offered these other options. And that's when he reiterated and said, my ride canceled on me and I didn't feel comfortable going without my team. So it's a little bit unclear. I do think the promoter, from some of the information he had provided, gave a better timeline of saying, here's when I contacted him beforehand. I'm not exactly sure with the combatant, the respondent, how many times he is stating that he had actually contacted the promoter. But I agree. He essentially said that he told the respondent he wasn't going to be there. I don't think there's a conflict over that. He did tell him, I'm not going to make it. Then the promoter said, here's the other options I have available for you. And that's where it's unclear as to what communications really did transpire after that. I did also think if we did not want to do a warning on that, because I do think there's, he didn't give his best efforts. It causes another fighter to, lose out on a contract, loses everyone else is, left not able to proceed. We could also consider doing a suspension. He seemed pretty adamant that he didn't want to pay a penalty. So I do think that's something the commission could consider maybe in lieu of that, or keep the initial $250 civil penalty. And if he doesn't want to pay that, he would have to appear at a formal hearing. But maybe that is another option to potentially discipline him and hold him accountable. Could be a 3-month suspension, similar to the recommendation on number 2.
When was that fight scheduled to be?
June of 2023.
Okay, thank you.
Do we know if the respondent has fought since then?
I don't believe he's fought in Tennessee. I can double check that real fast.
Yeah, in my opinion, for number 3, I would say maybe we change the civil penalty to the 3-month suspension. And besides that, I think I would be fine with making a motion to approve all 3.
I would second that.
And on that last case, it does look like he fought one more time at the end of June in his home state. So I think that was probably easier for him to get to that fight. It's not a exceptionally long distance, but it does look like he had fought at the end of June. So I'm not sure if after this one canceled, he quickly arranged something else. But that would be the last one he fought. It's last year.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that was originally because, like, if he hasn't fought in a year, then a 3-month suspension doesn't mean a lot. But at the same time, when he tries to apply for licenses in the future, he has to put that on his application. So.
Well, actually, I apologize. I'm sorry. I looked at the wrong year. It looks like he is scheduled to fight later this month. So it's 2024. June of 2024. So he did not fight after that date. It's been, it looks like about a year since he's been scheduled to fight.
Is that one in his home state?
It is. So I apologize. That's my fault. I looked
I
at.
wouldn't want to do that to another promoter.
No, I
Or his
understand.
fighter,
That does change things because, you know, if he agreed to that, then all of a sudden he's suspended and couldn't fight later this month.
Yeah, but just being suspended in our state won't stop him from fighting that bout, correct?
It shouldn't. I'm not sure how their state's rules are because I do believe some states, if you were suspended, I know we look at medical suspension and this wouldn't be considered a medical suspension. So I think that state would actually, you know, have to make that determination. I don't know their rules well enough.
Right now, we have a motion then on the table to accept the legal report with the amendment to number 3, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and we have a second. You've got the amendment to number 3.
Was it 1 month or 3 months?
3 months.
All those in favor of proceeding with the motion as seconded with the recommendation from legal counsel with the change to number 3, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. That takes care of the legal report. Thank you, members.
All right, so the next item that we have is our rulemaking hearing, and these are for the rules involving bare knuckle boxing. If approved today, I want to just to let everyone know kind of the procedure, but these are just proposals at this point. If these rules, if you all did vote to move forward with these, the next step is they would go to the Attorney General's office for review. And then once they're filed with the Secretary of State's office, about 90 days from then is when they would be effective. So even if you all voted today to move forward with these rules as proposed, bare knuckle boxing would not start immediately. It would be after 90 days after being filed with the Secretary of State's office. So I just want to make sure, and there are several rules, many rules in this package. Hopefully everyone's got a little bit of time to look at them. I will summarize all of them on the record as we go through the procedures, but just be aware of that. If you have questions about any specific ones as we get to them, please make that known so we can discuss those. These are modeled off of the unified rules that were proposed by the Association of Boxing Commissions, and they would align with those unified rules. So I will, unless anyone needs to take a break, now we can start moving forward with those. You all like to proceed? Okay. So this rulemaking is being called to order. My name is Jesse Gentry, and I serve as Chief Counsel in the Department of Commerce and Insurance Division of Regulatory Boards, and I represent the Tennessee Athletic Commission. Would agency representatives who are present introduce themselves for the record? So if you want to start.
Roxana Gamusio, Executive Director.
Corey Sipola.
Dan McGrew.
Benjamin Grove.
Christy Halbert.
All right, thank you. It is Monday, June 10th, 2024. This rulemaking hearing is taking place pursuant to the Tennessee Code annotated section 4-5-204 in room 1B of the Davy Crockett Tower, 500 James Robertson Parkway, Nashville, Tennessee. The purpose of this rulemaking is to solicit comments on proposed rules the Tennessee Athletic Commission has made public in order to regulate professional bare knuckle boxing in the state of Tennessee, and also clean up a few boxing and MMA rules to closer align with unified rules by the Association of Boxing Commissions. A rule is defined as an agency statement of general applicability that implements or prescribes law or policy or describes the procedures or practice requirements of the agency. Proposed rules are filed with the Office of the Secretary of State, and notice is given for public comment, and a rulemaking hearing is then held. Upon conclusion of the hearing and adoption of the proposed rules, the rules are forwarded to the Attorney General's office for review of legality. If approved, they're filed with the Secretary of State, which is responsible for publication, and the Government Operations Committee of the General Assembly. The rules must stay in the Secretary of State's office for 90 days, the end of which time will be the effective date. Those members of the public wishing to speak and appearing in person should make their name known on the sign-in sheet located at the podium. And then any members of the public wishing to speak and appearing via Microsoft Teams should put their name in the chat box. I do see a Teams application and Christina Hill listed. Other than Dana Lee and John Lillard, are either of you here to make public comments on the bare knuckle boxing rules?
Christina Hill, no.
Okay, and I'm not sure who the Teams application is, but if you wish to make a public comment, please place your name in the chat box. All right, seeing no one else registered for public comments, I would call your attention or anyone's attention to the desk located behind me. On this table, you'll find the red line copies of the rule amendments addressed in today's rulemaking. And for anyone who is listening online, you will find a link to the rules under the notice tab on the commission's calendar for today's hearing. Notice of this rulemaking, I included the entire text of the proposed rules and was published on the Tennessee Administrative Register website on January 20th, 2024. An electronic notification of the rules and this rulemaking hearing was sent through the e-notification system on February 5th, 2024. And notice of the rulemaking hearing was added to the Commission's public calendar on April 8th, 2024. Ms. Camusio, are you aware of any additional notice that was given to any affected individuals?
Just the ones you mentioned.
Okay. And then as the agency hears public comments on the proposed rules, I will serve as moderator and I reserve the right to limit such comments if they become repetitive. So we will limit any comments made accordingly. So now I will summarize the rules that we have. First, we have an amendment to the general provisions section, which is 0145-01-.02 titled definitions. There are two new definitions, one new definition, and then a modification amendment to the definition of boxing. But there was a new definition for bare knuckle boxing, which means boxing where unarmed combatants do not wear gloves of any form or any form of padding on their hands. And then there is an amendment to boxing to allow for bare knuckle boxing. Next would be for chapter 0145-02 professional boxing. There is an amendment to the applicability rule, which is 0145-02-01. And this would allow this would state that the provisions of this chapter apply also to bare knuckle boxing bouts unless they conflict with the rules specifically applicable to bare knuckle boxing, because there's a new chapter for bare knuckle boxing. There is also an amendment to Rule 0145-0.
Can I interrupt with a question?
Yes.
Is that necessary? Is that sentence necessary if we already define boxing in point 6 above that where, so it would include bare knuckle boxing?
That is a great question. The reason we did that was to make sure that anything else in this chapter for professional boxing that could just apply and stand alone would still apply, because we did not add for the bare knuckle rules specific changes to the fees. It would be the same fee for boxing. Any changes for the licensing procedures. So we just leave all those to stand. So we're just updating applicability to make sure that essentially, unless it's defined otherwise for the bare knuckle boxing, this chapter will apply.
I have another question on that page. I thought in the last, or maybe it was 2 rule revisions ago, I thought we had gone to language that did not specify gender or included both genders. At the bottom of that page, I'm looking at point 1A. He is advised. I thought we were he, she, or they. I can't remember now. It was a while back, but maybe that one slipped through, or is it a pattern? I say that just to make sure that we are not allowing for loopholes and also being inclusive.
No, I understand. I will double check on that if it was not included with the last round when we made those changes. That is something that likely could be added without making a subsequent rulemaking hearing. We would confirm with the Attorney General's office, but typically those types of changes, since it's already a rule that's being amended, can be added. But I will make a note of that and then make sure I check with them. Okay, the next rule, which was the one that was mentioned, was 145-02-0.14, which is the technical knockout. The red lines of this do make an amendment to add or lose control of bodily functions as a TKO, a technical knockout. And I believe that's something that's also in the unified rules, but we have had questions on that previously because there was not a provision for that. And then also, as noted, looking at the gender inclusive pronouns there for adding /she. The next rule is 0145-02-0.17 time limitations. This is an amendment to change the months to days just for consistency. So we know that it is going to be 90 days instead of 91 days, or just for, if it's for 3 months. The next one is an amendment to rule or the chapter 0145-03 kickboxing and mixed martial arts to delete rule 0145-03-0.09 in its entirety, which is the standing 8 count for kickboxing that was previously removed for boxing, and then for consistency would be removed from kickboxing as well. There was an amendment to rule 0145-03-0.12 for the weight classifications, which would be an amendment to the weight classes to better align with the ABC's weight classes, specifically also including the atom weight, which is up to 105 pounds. That was not under our classifications. And then also some language about if for the allowances and contracted catch weights.
My only concern here is on the weights that would be used. So I'm looking at page 5.4, that if we're looking at pounds, maybe the pounds should be 0.01 rather than 0.1. Unless a straw weight unless an atom weight that weighs 0.04 is still an atom weight, or would they be classified as a straw weight?
My understanding, based on the way that ours are written, is they would still be an atom weight since they didn't get to that 0.1.
Okay.
But we can confirm with the unified rules as well, just to make sure that.
Oh, so these are part of the unified rules. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So if they weighed in at 0.05, then they wouldn't qualify for either weight class really, because they would weigh too much. They would be.
Unless we were rounding the
pound over.
No, that's a good question. I don't believe we would round it up. So I think if they were, well, that's a good question because it says up to 105.
Is there a easier way to just say like greater than? Sort of like greater than 105 pounds? Then.
But these are written as the unified rules read?
Yes, that is how I would, yes. I will go back and look just for confirmation. I don't believe that they'd list hundredths of a pound. I think it's only tenths. But you're correct. If it's up to and including 105, and if it was 105.0.
So do the Tennessee rules allow someone that is technically weighted as a straw weight at 110 to go up a weight class to fight, or do they have to fall within that like 5 pound or 10 pound range? I know, I believe when I fought in Pennsylvania that it was, you could go up 2 weight classes, but you couldn't go up 3.
I believe our rule as is
not 2.
Right. I believe as ours is currently written, you would only be able to go up 1 because the heavier weight can't exceed 5 pounds of the lower fighter. And I'm trying to think if I do my math on this correct. None of the weight classes should be wide enough that someone could be less than 5 pounds and be 2 weight classes. So if someone was weighing an atom weight, someone at 105 could fight someone, I guess, is a straw weight at 110, but they couldn't fight a straw weight who's 106 based on the way that our rule is written. Because you wouldn't be able to go up and fight someone who is 6 pounds heavier. But I suppose well, because that does also have to do with contracted weight. So I could see a situation where if they were contracted to fight as a straw weight, even though they were lower than that, where we might still allow that. But as it's currently written, a straw weight is up to 115. So as it is right now, someone who is 105, 104, they would be fighting as a straw weight and under our classification right now. Because we don't have the atom weight listed.
But if they weighed 114, they could not fight in flyweight. They wouldn't weigh enough to fight in flyweight, or they could go up one weight class.
I think in our current, they would be allowed to. You'd have to look at the contracted weight and then the differential between them. So if they were contracted both to fight as flyweight and one of them came in at 114, I think we would still allow that, depending on, because it's still meeting the contracted weight. But if they were contracted to come in at draw weight and one of them came in heavier, we would then have to look at that 5 pound differential.
Gotcha, understood.
And under the amendment right now that we're proposing, we'd have no allowance restrictions if they both weigh in within the same contracted division / weight class, which that language came from the unified rules.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I was asking is because if they can move up a weight class, then it makes the 0.1 not matter as much.
Right. But I think most of it's going to come down to depending on what they're contracted to fight at. And that's how we would start when we would look at it. Are there any other questions with this rule? I mean, would the commission want to look at changing from where it says up to and including 105 to up to and including 105.09? Not sure if that needs to be listed or not, but that would remove that issue with 1/100th of a pound there.
Well, if these are unified rules, then I think combatants and promoters would have historical experience with interpretation of the rules. So I'm satisfied with the way they're written.
Okay, now we'll move on to, here's specifically the new rules then for bare knuckle boxing, which would be a new chapter of rules, which would be 0145-06. The first rule would be an applicability chapter, and specifically this rule would say that this chapter would apply to bare knuckle bouts, but if there's a rule that does not or is not addressed an issue that's not addressed within this chapter, then we would defer back to the boxing chapter. Specifically, we also say that combatants, referees, promoters, seconds, announcers, matchmakers, judges, and timekeepers who participate in bare knuckle boxing would comply with all licensing applications and other requirements related to license for professional boxing. And we will get to an area that's related to one of the comments after the rules specifically with that, but the unified rules, I think this is an appropriate time to list it. The unified rules that were presented at the ABC conference prohibited amateur bare knuckle boxing and specifically stated a fighter couldn't debut in bare knuckle boxing. They had to have prior experience in combat sports. That was one of the comments that we received, and we can dig into that when we talk about the comments that were received prior to today's meeting. But that is something I think the commission should be aware of at this stage as we look at this chapter. Well, and this specific rule, I mean, unless we'll get to that rule about amateurs, but unless the commission feels otherwise that, we should allow amateur bare knuckle, that was something under the unified. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page with that. Then the next rule would be 0145-06-.02. This outlines the fighting area for a bare knuckle boxing bout. And this came specifically from the unified rules as well, as it talks about being able to use a ring or a cage. The next one is a new rule 145-06-.03, and it relates to hand wraps that are allowed for a bare knuckle bout.
I have a question about point 1.
Yes,
The way this currently reads, is gauze permitted within 1 inch of the knuckles or only tape? So I'm looking specifically at the last sentence of point 1. Should that read, the gauze and surgical tape shall not be applied within 1 inch, or is gauze permitted on the knuckles of bare knuckle? I was under the impression nothing was on the knuckles.
No, it's not permitted on there.
So
far as I know.
I think we're just missing gauze and.
I think you're correct then, if that's how it is supposed to be. And I will confirm that's not a typo with the unified rules as well, but there would seem to be a minor conflict there with 1 and 2 then. If no tape or gauze can extend past the knuckle, but tape shall not be applied within 1 inch of the knuckle, it would appear that the gauze would be allowed. So I think you're right. I think it should likely say tape or gauze.
Well,
Will not be
and point
applied.
2 as well, it rather than extending past the combatant's knuckle, I think should read no gauze or tape within 1 inch of combatant's knuckle when a closed fist is made. Does another commissioner have a comment on that? Am I reading that incorrectly?
I would defer to you all on that, because I'm not sure if the rules, if
The knuckles are not supposed to have anything on them, is my understanding.
That's correct.
So I think 1 and 2 need to be looked at for the wording.
and that's what I was going to ask. And if you're applying it, the tape within 1 inch of it, is it good? Is it going to look different than when you make that clenched fist? And I think that's maybe why they had drafted 2 that way. That I'm just not sure if it would be, if there would be any movement between applying it with a open hand and then clenching. Okay.
No, I think for points 1 and 2, the issue is shall not be applied within 1 inch of the knuckles. Whether or not you want to mention the closed fist for point 2, I think is fine, but still, for point 1, we need to include gauze, and then for point 2, rather than no gauze, no tape or gauze will extend past the combatant's knuckle, should now read no tape or gauze will extend past within 1
Within 1
inch
inch.
of the combatant's knuckle. And I think that would take care of it.
And I think that makes sense. I just wasn't sure practically if that would change between when if you're applying it outside of that 1 inch, if you're making a fist, if it might creep up a little bit past that 1
It
inch, that
shouldn't
would be
move,
allowed.
actually. I mean.
That's what
the
my
hand
thought
wrap
would be.
should
I
not
think you're
Move up and down.
right. But I think we can make that change, and I think that'll be fine. Okay. The next one is a new rule for, it's an apparel rule for 0145-06-.04 involving protective equipment and apparel. And this specifically outlines the requirement to have a mouth guard, shoes, and then there is a rule that states that combatants must wear such protective gear or equipment as deemed necessary by the commission. There's a little bit of discretion there, but then it also talks about wearing certain other items to make sure that people will be protected against fouls. I think how we would classify that. And also the prohibitions on wearing jewelry is specifically prohibited as well. The unified rules have these as 2 separate rules. We put them in one, just to keep all the apparel in one rule. And there was that rule that allows for soft neoprene type sleeves to cover the knees or elbows. All right, the next rule is 0145-06-0.05 and involves the use of petroleum jelly and specifically prohibits using excessive petroleum jelly or another similar substance on any part of the body. That's also determined within the discretion of the referee. The next rule is 0145-06-0.06 and involves weight classifications. And part of the reason why this is a little bit different, the unified rules did specifically outline weight classifications. And as we have modified ours to add that atom weight, which was not listed in the unified rules for bare knuckle boxing, we're using the classification that they proposed, but there are just some minor differences there as it relates to straw weight, fly weight, and then I believe it starts to even out as the weights get heavier. The next rule is 0145-06-0.07 involving the number of rounds for a bare knuckle bout.
I had a recommendation for that rule. It seems like female participants are already covered in the rest of the rule. Our policy at Tennessee Athletic Commission has been that males and females compete with the same rules unless deemed necessary, difference deemed necessary. So I would recommend striking 0.6.
Okay.
And basically that would allow a promoter or participants, female participants, to participate in bouts of 2 or 3 minute rounds in duration, which would be consistent with our professional boxing rule.
Are there any other thoughts on that rule? So we can strike number 6. This rule also does contain that prohibition on making a bare knuckle professional debut without having previous combat sport experience, which is number 4. If there are no other comments on that rule, I can move on to the next one.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. New rule would be 0145-06-0.08 involving seconds, which basically just requires that seconds be licensed similar to the professional round. This is all right. And I know we have that rule about applicability. So if you did want to strike this, I think it is already stated, but we just basically said that we're including it again since it's what the unified rules had listed. But if you all did not want to include this one, we could remove it. But I think it is just for clarity. Okay, the next rule is 0145-06-0.09 involving amateur events. This rule specifically prohibits amateur bare knuckle boxing.
I have a question about this rule. Does this also include exhibitions? As some people will sometimes work around a rule and by calling it an exhibition.
The way that is written, it does not. So that is something that we could consider to add because essentially an individual, we don't have amateurs. And if someone tried to say, well, it's not professional because we're not paying them and it's not amateur because it doesn't meet the definition of an amateur event. That is something that we could add. We don't have a definition of what an exhibition match is in any of our rules. That is something that we have looked at internally about whether or not we should propose that because we have received that question about events not being licensed for exhibitions. So if we could change the language to specifically state, neither amateur nor exhibition bare knuckle boxing or I guess amateur and bare knuckle amateur or exhibition are prohibited in the state. That'd be clear.
I would support that, given the health, safety, and welfare of participants, that we add that exhibitions would also be prohibited.
I agree with that. Of course, they could call it exhibition or developmental bouts. But
Can we, maybe we can clear that up in a definition of exhibition?
We could add in a definition for exhibition. Do you all have a proposal for, and this is something else that we have also looked at as well. There are other states specifically that regulate exhibition, that they've got basically 3 categories of professional, amateur, and exhibition. Arguably, we wouldn't be able to go down that path without a statutory change if to regulate exhibition. However, we could, I think, put some more teeth in saying what an exhibition is, and prohibiting that within our rules. Because a lot of times, I think the question that we look at is, should this be licensed as a professional bout? Are you paying them in some way other than, having a purse for that fight? Are they receiving some type of rights to that, whether that's media rights that have, a monetary value that could be calculated based on that? So if you did want to add exhibition, specifically as it states, to prohibit exhibition for bare knuckle boxing at least, I think we would add that to the definition section and probably define it without looking at other language as an exhibition means probably a bout that is not professional or amateur, and just leave it at that.
or where there are not paid individuals present, where individuals do not pay to come to the event. Audience members have paid to see an event,
Mhm.
something along those lines. No paid admission.
Or maybe like, I know a lot of gyms do exhibitions as just a different rule set than amateur. It's basically preparing your students for amateur fights so that they're not getting in over their head right away. So you can do shorter time limits, you can do less rounds, you can do like for MMA, we would do like no head kicks, no, like change the strikes from grounded opponents different. Like, I think for our exhibitions, one of the rules I proposed was that if there's a grounded opponent, the other fighter has to be grounded in order to strike to the face. They can't throw punches from standing. Just whatever we can do to make it a safer environment for the fighters so that they can get a feel for it, but not be thrown to the wolves and get in with somebody that's a D1 wrestler and just gonna demolish them either.
And are those type of exhibition matches, are they for training purposes though, or is it at an event where someone could pay to? Because I think that's the question is
They're
typically.
usually paid events,
Okay.
but
They are part of
they're insured.
part of the training. Yeah, so they are insured. They're part of a progressive, they're part of a progression toward competition, correct?
Correct.
As
And that-
opposed to what I think the question that's come up here is a promoter who might had a card with exhibition bouts in order to get around paying a contestant, medicals for a contestant, and so forth.
Or just sanctioning, sort of like some of the celebrity boxing stuff.
Mhm. So I don't know if we want to look at exhibitions on the whole as part of a separate package outside of this. I think at the very least, prohibiting amateurs and exhibition from bare knuckle, I think we could do that. I think maybe where we get maybe in the weeds on this, if we try to make that definition of exhibition today, then we start getting all those additional questions of, well, this is more of a training thing, which direction do we need to go? Should this be licensed and sanctioned? Where do we fall on that?
I agree. I think in the case of bare knuckle, I think it's very cut and dry that we want to make sure that the professional rules are followed. And I support adding exhibitions for the rule that we're discussing now.
I agree.
Okay. And I think that that's the easiest way. I will say we can look into exhibitions further as well, just as a larger conversation, because I think that might take some bigger changes. But I think just adding that, just amateur and exhibition bare knuckle bouts are prohibited in the state of Tennessee. That should be clear enough without getting too many questions. Okay, the next rule would be 0145-06-.10, duties and responsibilities of the referee. And this adds all of the responsibilities essentially that are in addition to what they would do during a typical boxing match. But they would go through this and looks at some different fouls that were specifically outlined in the unified rules that are very specific to bare knuckle, because they would not happen with regular boxing, specifically, looking at manipulating opponent's fingers, putting a finger in a cut or laceration of an opponent, hooking, gouging the eye is still pretty similar, because you can still kind of do that with the thumb. But for the most part, these are just additional fouls that would be considered. The other ones could still apply if there was anything that was under the professional rules that were not listed in the unified rules. And they would use the procedures for determining a foul as outlined under the professional boxing rules. But these were the specific fouls were outlined by ABC under the unified rules. So the next one would be 0145-06-.11 scoring. Scoring would be identical as professional boxing. And then the next rule would be knockouts, knockdowns, and decisions, which is rule 0145-06-.12. And this lists the referee as having the sole authority to determine when a knockdown has occurred, and then uses the same procedures to determine knockdown, knockout, technical knockout, disqualification, technical decision, draw, no contest, or any other decision to end the bout for bare knuckle as it would be for professional boxing. And then next would be fouls and foul-related injuries. I do want to actually go back. I'm sorry. I do think the one for knockouts, knockdowns, and decisions should cite chapter 0145-02, which is the professional boxing chapter. So that is a minor change there. I apologize about that. And I think that would be also in the next one as well. It should be 02 instead of 06. But the next one would be 0145-06-.13 fouls and foul-related injuries, giving the referee the sole authority to determine when a foul has happened and to use the same procedures for professional boxing. Similar to that one previously, it should say chapter 0145-02 for the use of instant replay, because that's the professional boxing chapter. And then rule 0145-06-.14 bare knuckle boxing physicians. This was something that was outlined specifically not only at the ABC's unified rules, but also at their conference as well, saying that any physicians that are working as medical staff for an event should have experience with laceration repair. That was noted at the conference as being the highest rate of injury were lacerations during bare knuckle bouts, and that was something they want to outline. I would think, and Dr. Halbert, you could probably correct me on this if I'm incorrect, but I would think most of our doctors already have experience in that we're licensing, because that would mostly be stitches and I guess closing lacerations, but they did want to specifically outline that. So I don't think that we're going to have issues with finding physicians that are already qualified to do this, but that was something they wanted noted. All right, and that is the outline of all of the rules. And as I did state during that, we did receive one public comment that was in writing. Ms. Camusio received that. And specifically, there was a question that was about whether or not we would allow amateur bare knuckle boxing. And as stated in the rules are being proposed, and as under the unified rules, it would be not allowed for amateur. And then also the decision today was to add or exhibition. But that was the only comment that we received in writing prior to that. Is that correct? Did you receive any other? Okay. And I don't see if there's anyone who's on the Microsoft Teams who has any questions in the chat. I'd say either John Lillard or Dana Lee, if you could let us know if anyone has proposed any questions that we can't see.
I don't see any in the chat.
Okay, great. So at this point, we can make the decision, we can close the public comment period unless you all believe we should extend that for any reason, but seeing no one present today, this was actually noticed a little bit longer than a lot of our rulemakings are required by statute, but this has been noticed. We've received one comment in writing ahead of today's meeting. I think we can close the public comment period then today. So there'll be several items that we'll have to adopt by roll call vote. First, we would need a motion to adopt the hearing rules and the language as amended, as we've discussed. Specifically, we changed the amateur rule to add the prohibition on exhibitions. And then we changed the rule on hand wraps to say that it would not extend, the gauze would not be applied within 1 inch of the knuckle and would not extend within 1 inch of the fist when it's clenched. The amendment to the technical knockout rule to say he/she. The removal of, make sure I have the correct citation, but the removal of number 6 under the rounds for rule 0145-06-07, prohibiting female participants from engaging in rounds that are 3 minutes in duration. And then the correction to the citation to chapter 0145-02 in the knockouts, knockdowns, and decisions, and fouls and foul-related injuries. So if the board is comfortable today with adopting these rules and having them move forward, we would need a motion to adopt them as amended, and we would do that by roll call.
Do we have a motion to adopt these as amended?
I make a motion to adopt the rules as amendment.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion by Dan McGrew and a second by Ben Grove by roll call vote in agreement of the motion as presented. Christy Halbert.
Aye.
Ben Grove.
Aye.
Dan McGrew.
Aye.
Corey Cipolla. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, I'll read the regulatory flexibility addendum, into the record. Pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated Section 4-5-401 through 404, prior to initiating the rulemaking process, all agencies shall conduct a review of whether a proposed rule or rules affect small businesses, specifically the extent to which a rule may overlap, duplicate, or conflict with other federal, state, or local government rules. These rules do not overlap, duplicate, or conflict with other federal, state, or local government rules. The clarity, conciseness, and lack of ambiguity of the rule. The rules are written in a way that is clear and concise and generally understandable. The establishment of flexible compliance and reporting requirements for small businesses. The agency does not anticipate the requirement to establish flexible compliance and reporting requirements specifically for small businesses. As a result of these rules, small businesses will be able to participate in bare knuckle boxing upon the promulgation of these rules, and the reporting compliance requirements are created by the rules in a manner that is necessary for the safety of those engaging in combat sports. The establishment of friendly schedules or deadline compliance for reporting requirements for small businesses. The agency does not anticipate the requirement to establish friendly schedules or deadlines for compliance and reporting specifically for small businesses. As a result of these rules, small businesses will be able to participate in bare knuckle boxing upon the promulgation of these rules, and the reporting and compliance requirements created by these rules are necessary for the safety of those engaging in combat sports. Number 5, the consolidation or simplification of compliance or reporting requirements for small businesses. The agency does not anticipate the need to establish consolidated or simplified compliance reporting requirements specifically for small businesses as a result of these rules. Small businesses will be able to participate in bare knuckle boxing upon the promulgation of these rules, and the reporting compliance are created for the necessary safety of those engaging in combat sports. Number 6, the establishment of performance standards for small businesses as opposed to design or operational standards required in the rules. The department does not anticipate the need to establish different standards specifically for small businesses as a result of these rules. Small businesses will be able to participate in bare knuckle boxing upon promulgation of the rules, and the reporting and compliance requirements created by these rules are necessary for the safety of those engaging in combat sports. Number 7, the necessary creation of entry barriers or other effects that stifle entrepreneurial activity, curb innovation, or increase costs, the unnecessary creation of those. The department does not anticipate the proposed rules will create entry barriers or other effects that will stifle entrepreneurial activity, curb innovation, or increase costs. Individuals who wish to participate in bare knuckle boxing contests will pay the additional fees specifically for those contests. However, the regulation of bare knuckle boxing contests will allow for additional entrepreneurial activity in the state by allowing for new combat sports to be held. So I would need a motion to adopt that regulatory flexibility addendum as read.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Christy Halbert to accept the regulatory flexibility addendum and a second by Dan McGrew. All those in favor to proceed and adopt these, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm sorry. Roll
Aye.
call vote. I apologize. I'm jumping ahead. Christy Halbert? Ben Grove? Thank you. Dan McGrew?
Aye.
Corey Sepola?
Aye.
Thank you. It passes by roll call vote.
All right, now I will have to read the impact on local government statement into the record pursuant to TCA 4-5-228. The Tennessee Athletic Commission foresees no impact on local governments as a result of these rules. So I'll need a motion to adopt that statement into the record.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Christy Halbert and a second by Corey Sepola to adopt as presented. All those in favor, I will go by roll call vote. Christy Halbert,
Aye.
Ben Grove,
Aye.
Dan McGrew,
Aye.
Corey Sepola.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, perfect. The final aspect of this rulemaking will be the answers to the questions for the Joint Government Operations Committee. And this is also going to be pushed on the end of the filing sheet that goes to the Secretary of State's office. But specifically, we look at a rule or a brief summary of the rule. The text would be the proposed rule amendments allow for the regulation of bare knuckle boxing bouts consistent with the unified rules approved by the Association of Boxing Commissions. The commission currently regulates professional boxing. However, the current rules do not allow for bare knuckle bouts due to the requirements for professional boxing being inconsistent with the requirements for bare knuckle bouts. The intention of these rules is to allow for the regulation of bare knuckle boxing in a manner that protects those involved and the public. Additionally, these rules amend the provisions related to professional boxing and mixed martial arts to allow more consistency with the unified rules adopted by the ABC. Specifically, these rules align with the mixed martial arts weight classes to align with the ABC unified weight classes, changes to timelines and months to days for greater consistency and regulation, and remove the standing 8 count from kickboxing. Next, we'll have a citation and brief description of any federal laws regarding the mandated promulgation of any rules or guidelines for these rules. The rule amendments are not required to achieve compliance with any state or federal law. Next, we'll have the identification of persons, organizations, corporations, or government entities most directly affected by these rules, and whether those persons, organizations, or corporations urged adoption or rejection of these rules. These rules impact participants who are involved with combat sports, specifically bare knuckle boxing. These rules will allow for the regulation of bare knuckle boxing in the state of Tennessee, consistent with the unified rules created by the Association of Boxing Commissions and other states that have adopted or will adopt the unified rules. Subsection D, identification of any opinions of the Attorney General and reporter or any judicial rulings that directly relates to these rules or the necessity to promulgate these rules. There are no known opinions of the Attorney General and reporter or any judicial rulings that directly affect these rules. An estimate of the probable increase or decrease in state and local government revenues and expenditures, if any, resulting from the promulgation of these rules, and the assumptions and reasoning upon which those estimates are based. An agency will not state that a fiscal impact is minimal if the fiscal impact is more than 2% of the agency's annual budget or $500,000, whichever is less. So our answer is that the department does not anticipate a significant cost for the administration and enforcement of these rules. It's anticipated that many of these same promoters, combatants, and other licensees who participate in professional combat sports will also participate in bare knuckle boxing in the state. Therefore, there's not an anticipation of a significant number of new or additional administration or enforcement actions related to the regulation of bare knuckle boxing contests. The department will need to update its application licensing programs to accommodate the new license type. However, this is not an anticipated significant cost. Additionally, the department anticipates that many of the costs associated with the enforcement of these rules will match the current cost of the enforcement of these actions related to the administration of professional combat sports. The department anticipates that bare knuckle boxing contests will likely supplement professional combat sports and will likely not lead to a significant increase in the number of combat sport contests held, but instead will allow promoters to decide to hold professional boxing or bare knuckle contests without increasing the overall number of contests held. Identification of the appropriate agency representatives or representatives possessing substantial knowledge and understanding of the rules, and that would be for listing individuals who could attend the joint government operations meeting. Traditionally, we list the attorney as well as the executive director. So we have listed myself as chief counsel and then Roxana Gamusio as the executive director for the commission. The identification of appropriate agency representatives who will explain the rules at any scheduled meetings. We've listed myself, Roxana Gamusio, and then we've also listed, oh, he's not here anymore, but we had listed the new assistant commissioner for the Division of Regulatory Boards, Reed Witcher, because he would likely appear at the Joint GovOps committee. And then listing the address, telephone number of those individuals, we've included that on the form. And then for any additional information for the committee, we didn't have anything additional. So those would be the answers that we would include on the filing form and give to the Joint Government Operations Committee. So unless there's anything that you all want to add, we just need a motion to adopt that additional information.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion by Christy Halbert and a second by Ben Grove to adopt the responses as our attorney Jesse has presented by roll call vote to agree to proceed with this. Christy Halbert.
Aye.
Ben Grove.
Aye.
Dan McGrew.
Aye.
Corey Cipolla.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, and that was the last thing we had to do for this rulemaking hearing. I greatly appreciate all of your time and patience on this. We will conclude the rulemaking hearing. These forms, or I will put this on the form for filing with the Secretary of State's office. It will be submitted to the governor's office for final review and then submitted to the Attorney General's office prior to filing with the Secretary of State's office. But once everything is signed internally and then filed with the Secretary of State, rules generally become effective 90 days from the date of filing after receiving a positive recommendation from the Joint Government Operations Committee. So I do anticipate these will go through the Attorney General's office, probably take some time to review. Some of our other rules have taken much longer to review. I have been in contact with the Attorney General's office about several matters related to combat sports recently, so they are aware that this rulemaking is occurring today, and didn't have any questions before today's hearing. So once everything is signed, we'll get that submitted to them, and hopefully by our next meeting, I think September. In September, we should have an update as to whether or not it's been signed and submitted, and then hopefully a date that these will become effective. Do you all have any questions? Right. I'll turn it back over to the executive director.
Thank you. Thank you very much, members. We're on the last part of our agenda. If there's any new business, please let me know. If not, I will read, of course, on the record. And I'm sorry, Ben, you did have something? You go right ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I know we had spoken in the past about how we get more big events to come into the state.
Mhm.
And I did get some information last month that Dan White did a news conference and said that any state that sanctions slap boxing or I don't even know what it's called, honestly,
Yes.
will get more UFC events in their state, because he wants to have slap boxing on Friday, UFC on Saturday, and WWE on Sunday. So as a revenue builder, I didn't know if maybe we were interested in getting more information on the safety of that sport, but
Yes, please.
So this was, SLAP was discussed at the ABC conference, and there was some great resources. This was last year that was presented in terms of kind of the medical side of it. And I anticipate they'll probably do that again this year at the ABC conference. When we've looked at it previously, we have some statutory issues as it relates to how we would be able to regulate it, because it doesn't completely fall within the definition of combat sports. But I am happy to look at that again and talk to the Attorney General's office to see if it is something similar to bare knuckle that we could try to do by rule. Otherwise, my understanding is when we've previously looked at it, there was a decision that it probably had to come through a statutory change. But I mean, I'm happy to look at it and give an update for the next meeting as well, if there's anything we could do on that front. My understanding from the ABC conference was from some of the medical information that was presented, there was some people who had a positive slant and some people who didn't have such a positive slant in terms of health, safety, and welfare. So if that is something that we were heading in that direction, we would likely want to look at that in depth as well.
totally agree.
But it's a good update to know that that's kind of being, I guess, dangled out there as the carrot to getting more events.
Yeah, Dana White doesn't pull any punches, man.
No.
He says it the way it is.
Right.
Well, I would also like to ask, I attended a boxing event a month or so ago, but there was a individual that was thrown out of the ring and had to be taken by stretcher out. I would just want to know if there was any information on that particular individual and how he's doing.
He's doing okay. Yes, we followed up and he was doing okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're so welcome. And never hesitate to reach either Jesse or I if you've got questions that way. While we've got it fresh in our mind and to answer you, that absolutely anytime. That's what we're here for. The last item, of course, as you know, members are able to participate through Teams. Dana and John are part of my team and amazing, so they'd let us know if there are any questions, anyone participating or coming in person. But before we wrap up, I want to make sure if there are any questions that anyone presents and I don't see any, they would let us know. Of course, we welcome in-person participation. We always want to have an opportunity if they have something to opine about the agenda or what we've done so that we can be very transparent. I don't think I've got anything else. Really appreciate everything that was presented and discussed today. So we would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Dan. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Corey, and welcome for your first meeting. There was a lot covered. I appreciate that. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, we're at 3:55. Please say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you so much, Commission members, for everything you do. Thank you, John and Dana. You can go ahead and stop our recording.